My brother always loved standing taller than me, not because he was kinder, wiser, or more successful in life, but because he believed my life existed only to make his shine brighter. The day of his MBA graduation arrived wrapped in luxury. The venue was enormous. Polished marble floors reflecting chandeliers that looked like frozen stars. Powerful families filled the hall, executives, investors, politicians, people who spoke softly but carried weight with every word. I walked in quietly through the side entrance, not because I wasn't invited, but because I arrived straight from work. My uniform was neatly pressed, though the faint smell of coffee and detergent clung to it no matter how hard I tried. I had just finished a double shift at the restaurant, downtown, the same place where I'd been working for years as a waitress. I didn't mind the job. It paid my bills. It taught me discipline. It gave me dignity. But to my brother, it was a joke. I spotted him instantly. Front row, perfect suit, confident smile, surrounded by people who laughed loudly at everything he said. He looked like someone who believed the world owed him applause. His eyes found me, and his smile changed. He stood up, raised his voice just enough for the people around him to hear. "Well, look who made it," he said, scanning my uniform from top to bottom. "Did you come straight from serving tables?" Laughter rippled through his circle. I felt my chest tighten, but I kept walking. I took a seat at the back. That should have been the end of it, but my brother wasn't finished. When his name was called and he walked onto the stage to receive its degree, the hall erupted in applause. He adjusted the microphone, smiled confidently, then looked directly at me. "I just want to thank my family," he said, "especially my parents for believing in real success." Then he paused. "And my sister," he continued, smirking. "She couldn't make it far academically. But someone has to serve coffee to winners like us, right?" The hall exploded with laughter. Even some professors smiled awkwardly. My hands trembled in my lap, not from shame, from restraint, because no one there knew the truth. They didn't know why I worked as a waitress. They didn't know what I had sacrificed. They didn't know who I really was. And they definitely didn't know what was about to happen next. The Danaan older man with calm eyes and a presence that silenced room slowly stood up. He didn't smile. He didn't clap. He simply adjusted his glasses and looked at my brother. "Young man," he said into the microphone, his voice firm, "before we conclude today's ceremony, there is something I must clarify."
The room grew quiet. My brother's smile froze. The dean's eyes moved across the audience. And then they stopped on me.
The silence in the hall felt heavier than applause ever could. My brother shifted his weight on the stage, the confident posture cracking just slightly. He laughed under his breath, thinking it was just another formal remark from an academic who enjoyed drama. But the dean didn't sit back down. He took a step forward. "I have attended thousands of graduations," the dean continued, his voice slow and deliberate. "I have shaken hands with future executives, founders, and leaders. But rarely do I witness arrogance dressed as achievement." A few murmurs rippled through the audience. My brother's smile faltered. The dean raised one finger gently, not accusing, but commanding attention. "Success," he said, "is not measured by the suit you wear, the title you earn, or the person you humiliate to feel taller." Every word landed like a stone. I could feel eyes turning toward me again, some curious, some confused, some suddenly uncomfortable. My brother forced a chuckle. "Sir, I think you misunderstood my joke." "This is not about a joke," the dean interrupted, his tone calm but immovable. "This is about truth." He turned slightly toward the side of the stage. "Please bring the file." A staff member approached and handed him a thin folder. My heart skipped. I knew that folder because I had signed it years ago. The dean opened it, adjusted his glasses again, and spoke. "The woman sitting at the back of this hall," he said, gesturing in my direction, "is not merely a guest." The hall leaned forward as one body. "She is one of the youngest strategic contributors this institution has ever partnered with." My brother blinked. Laughter bubbled in the audience, nervous, unsure. The dean raised his hand. "I am not finished." He flipped a page. 5 years ago, when this university faced a financial collapse due to mismanaged endowments, a silent investor stepped in, not with noise, not with headlines, but with intelligence. The room went still. That investor saved over 2,000 scholarships, saved departments, saved futures. My brother's mouth opened, closed, opened again. That investor, the dean said slowly, requested only one thing in return. The dean looked straight at me now, that her identity remain hidden. A strange sensation washed over me, not pride, not fear, but memory. Years ago, when our father died suddenly, leaving debts instead of inheritance, when my brother chose prestige and left the burden behind, when I took 2 jobs, 3, 4, when I smiled at customers while studying balance sheets at night, when I poured coffee with one hand and signed contracts with the other. My brother shook his head, laughing too loudly now. "This is ridiculous," he said. "My sister? She's a waitress." "Yes," the dean replied, "and a strategist, and a financier, and one of the most disciplined minds I have worked with in my 40-year career." The air felt thin. The dean closed the file. "She chose to work as a waitress not because she failed in life," he said, "but because she understands humility is a weapon in a world obsessed with ego." The hall was silent. No laughter now, just breathing and a realization. The dean turned back to my brother. "You're graduating today," he said, "but you still have much to learn." Then he faced me again. "And you," he added, his voice softening, "have carried power quietly." I didn't stand. I didn't smile. I simply met his gaze, because the truth was finally standing in the light. And my brother, he was shrinking. The applause didn't come immediately. People were still processing. Some stared at the dean. Some stared at me. Others slowly turned toward my brother, whose face had lost all color, the confident graduate who had walked onto the stage. Minutes earlier, now looked like a man, standing under a spotlight he never asked for. My mother was seated near the front. Her hands were clasped together tightly, knuckles white. She looked at me the way someone looks at a stranger they suddenly realize they never truly knew. She had always loved my brother loudly, and me quietly, or perhaps conveniently. The dean cleared his throat. "I want to be very clear," he said. "This institution does not celebrate humiliation. We celebrate growth." Then he stepped back, signaling the end of his address. But the damage of the truth had already been released into the room. The ceremony continued, but it no longer mattered. Not to me, not to my brother. When it finally ended, people stood, murmuring, whispering, pretending they hadn't just witnessed something extraordinary. My brother rushed off the stage. He didn't look at me. Not once. I stood slowly, adjusting my jacket over my uniform. My legs felt steady now. Calm had replaced the earlier tension. As I turned toward the exit, a hand touched my arm. It was my mother. Her eyes were glossy, conflicted, proud and ashamed all at once. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I searched her face for years of memories, the times she praised my brother's achievements while asking me if I had considered something better than waitressing, the nights she asked him about grades and asked me about tips. "I did tell you," I said gently. "You just didn't hear it the way you hear him." Her lips trembled. Before she could respond, my brother appeared. Up close, his anger was raw, uncontrolled. "What was that?" he snapped. "Did you plan this? Did you embarrass me on purpose?" I looked at him calmly. "I planned nothing," I replied. "I showed up. You chose the rest." His jaw tightened. "You let everyone think you were nothing," he said bitterly. "You let me believe." "I let you believe what you wanted," I interrupted, "because it made you feel powerful." People nearby slowed their steps, pretending not to listen. My brother laughed harshly. "So what now?" he said. "You're rich? You're important. Is that it?" I shook my head. "That was never the point." "Then what is?" he demanded. I leaned closer, not threatening, just honest. "The point," I said, "is that you mocked a life you didn't understand." He scoffed. You think this changes anything? I still have my degree. My future. Yes, I agreed. You do. Then I paused, and so do I. The words hung between us. He looked at me differently now, not superior, not mocking, but uncertain. For the first time in his life, he didn't know where he stood in comparison to me. I turned away. As I walked toward the exit, the dean approached me quietly. You handled that with grace, he said. I had practice, I replied. He smiled knowingly. Your silence protected many people, he said, but it also protected him. I stopped walking. That ends today, I said softly. The dean nodded, because he knew the real power wasn't the reveal. It was what came next. The hall had emptied, but the whispers lingered like smoke. I didn't rush out. I stopped near the back entrance, letting the reality sink in. My uniform still smelled faintly of coffee. My hands still carried the memory of countless orders delivered with a smile. But now that same uniform felt like armor. My brother stormed past, nearly colliding with professors, assistants, and guests. His face burned red not from embarrassment alone, but from the sudden realization that the invisible sister he'd always mocked had silently wielded power. I followed not to confront, but to ensure he understood the consequences. As we reached the marble steps outside, the dean appeared again, waiting patiently. You know the documents I mentioned? He asked, holding a small leather folder. The ones few have seen? I nodded. Yes. He handed it to me. Inside were contracts, bank authorizations, legal transfers, everything necessary to reveal that the silent investor had been me all along. I had signed under a corporate pseudonym years ago. No one in the world knew except a select few, and certainly not my brother. I looked up at him. Your graduation may have impressed them, I said softly, but it won't impress the people who matter in business. Not without integrity. His jaw clenched. Eustace, how? He stammered. You were working as a waitress. I closed the folder. Exactly. That's why no one suspected me. While you were busy mocking and laughing, I was building, learning, preparing. He tried to interrupt, but I held up a hand. Watch closely, I said. I called the dean to the side and quietly instructed him to send notifications to the university, board, and our investors. Within minutes, emails were dispatched. Bank approvals, financial statements, and confirmations arrived simultaneously. My secret power hidden for years was now fully visible to those who counted. The air changed around my brother. People began noticing him in a new light, not as the loud, arrogant graduate, but as someone who had underestimated everyone around him. His friends tried to offer support, but he waved them away, fumbling, flustered, powerless to explain. My mother arrived, panting slightly, her eyes wide. What is happening? She asked. I turned to her. Years of dismissing me, of praising only him, of laughing at my choices, I said, calm but cold. All those years I was preparing for a moment like this. I chose humility as my strategy. Her lips trembled. I didn't realize. I shook my head gently. You did realize. You just didn't care. That ends today. My brother finally spoke. So what now? You're going to take over everything? Show everyone? I smiled faintly. No, I already have. And I've decided who I trust and who I don't. You, unfortunately, are learning a very important lesson. Humility cannot be mocked. He lowered his eyes. The dean stepped back, giving me a knowing look. Your timing was perfect, he said. Your strategy flawless. I exhaled slowly. It wasn't about revenge, I said quietly. It was about revealing the truth. The rest will take care of itself from behind. I heard the soft footsteps of the girl I had mentored for years at the restaurant. She smiled at me. You finally showed them. I looked at her, nodding. Sometimes people have to witness the storm to understand the calm that built it. The city stretched before us outside the hall, lights glittering like 1,000 tiny stars. I felt steady, strong, invisible no longer. And my brother? He was learning the hardest lesson of his life. Mockery has consequences. and power, even hidden, cannot be ignored forever. The next morning, news of the mystery investor spread like wildfire. University boards, local newspapers, and social media buzzed with headlines. Waitress saves. MBA graduate scholarships. An unknown benefactor revealed. I watched from the rooftop cafe, coffee in hand, as the city absorbed the news. The same city where my brother had once strutted around thinking he owned it now whispered my name instead. He stormed into the cafe where I was seated, face red, hands shaking. "This is unbelievable," he yelled. "Everyone thinks you. I didn't flinch. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the silence stretch. "You mocked me yesterday," I said softly. "Laughed at my work, at the very life I built. Do you understand now?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "But I didn't know." "I didn't." "Exactly," I interrupted. "You didn't know. You judged without understanding. You underestimated every single thing I worked for. And the people you mocked? They see the truth now." His shoulders slumped. His arrogance had no armor today. Even my mother arrived quietly, sitting across the table. She looked ashamed, her eyes avoiding his. I didn't realize," she whispered. "You did," I said, calm but firm. "You just chose to ignore me." He looked between us, desperation flickering in his eyes. "So, what happens now?" I leaned back. "Now? Now you learn what it means to respect people. Not for their titles, not for their appearance, but for who they are and what they can do when underestimated." He flinched. The weight of my words sank deeper than any reprimand could have. Suddenly the dean walked in, his presence commanding yet subtle. "Power is rarely about being loud," he said. "It is quiet, patient, and strategic. What your sister has done isn't revenge, justice in its purest form." I smiled faintly. "Justice," I repeated. "Not humiliation, but understanding." My brother's lips quivered. The proud man who once mocked me had no words left. The waitress uniform I had worn yesterday was gone. Today I was myself, poised, calm, in a tailored suit reflecting confidence. And the irony wasn't lost on anyone. The girl who served coffee had now become the woman whose influence couldn't be ignored. He looked at me, eyes wide with disbelief. "So, all this time, you were—" "Yes," I said, "building, learning, preparing, all the while being underestimated, ignored, and mocked." My mother's voice shook. I am sorry." I shook my head gently. "It's not about apologies." The week that followed was surreal. Social media had exploded. My brother's graduation video went viral, but not for the reason he wanted. Instead of praise for his MBA achievement, the footage highlighted the dean's revelation, my calm dignity, and the silent power I had wielded. He couldn't walk anywhere without whispers trailing him. Colleagues, classmates, even his friends, people who once laughed at me now looked at him with subtle pity or quiet respect. I received messages too. Some from former customers, some from strangers who had read the story online, all expressing admiration. But the most important confrontation was yet to come. That evening, he stormed into the apartment I had just moved into. My mother followed hesitantly, glancing nervously between us. "Enough," he shouted, pacing. "You've humiliated me enough. Do you realize what this does to my reputation?" I leaned against the counter, calm. You think this is humiliation? Yes, he yelled. You made everyone laugh at me at my graduation. No, I said slowly. You laughed at me first, and now the truth is simply being revealed. Power has many faces, brother. Some people carry it quietly. Some people flaunt it. You chose the latter. I chose the former, and the difference is clear. He stopped mid-step, frustration boiling. What have you done? You've changed everything. My career, my image, everything is gone. I took a breath. Gone? No. Your arrogance was what was gone. You are still you. But now, for the first time, you understand that respect is earned, not inherited. My mother stepped forward, trembling. I didn't know. I was blind. I focused only on him, never on her. I shook my head. This isn't about blame. It's about learning. And lessons are always harsh when they are ignored for too long. He fell silent for the first time in his life. Not in anger, not in mockery. Silence. His chest rose and fell rapidly as he tried to process the reality. The sister, he mocked, the one he called insignificant, had silently mastered a realm he couldn't even comprehend. I don't understand, he muttered. How? How could you have done all this? I smiled faintly. Because I never needed you to understand. I only needed the opportunity to act. He sank into a chair, defeated. His pride shattered quietly, like glass slipping from hands that once held too tightly to it. Outside, the sun was setting. The city glowed golden, oblivious to the quiet power shifts that had just taken place inside this small apartment. And I realized in that moment that my journey wasn't about revenge. It was about balance, about teaching the people around me that strength is not in mocking, but in respecting, observing, and quietly building until the moment is right. My brother's lessons had begun, and I would watch patiently as he learned them. The following week, the university hosted an official ceremony to honor contributors who had impacted the institution quietly. Invitations went out publicly, and I was asked to attend as the keynote speaker for the evening. My brother received his invitation too, but this time, it wasn't a celebration of his degree. It was a reminder he had underestimated. Someone who had been quietly orchestrating influence far beyond his comprehension. He arrived, looking tense, checking his reflection in every polished surface. My mother was beside him, silent, her face pale with realization. She finally understood the magnitude of what had happened, and how long she had ignored me. As I walked onto the stage, the audience clapped politely, many still unsure who I was. I smiled faintly, projecting calm confidence. I want to share a story tonight, I began, voice steady, about humility, respect, and the hidden power of persistence, about what happens when someone chooses to build quietly while others mock them, assuming they are small, insignificant, or powerless. Eyes in the audience widened. My brother's friends shifted uncomfortably. Even some faculty members leaned forward, curious. I continued, we often judge based on appearances. We laugh at the waitress, the quiet colleague, the shy student. But the truth is, greatness is not always loud. Influence is not always visible. And respect is not something you inherit. It's something you earn. A hush fell over the room. The dean nodded subtly from the side. My mother's eyes glistened with tears. My brother looked smaller, like a man realizing the foundation he had built on arrogance was crumbling. And sometimes, I said, lowering my voice slightly so that only he could feel it, the people you dismiss the most hold the power to change everything in your life. And when they do, your arrogance will meet the consequences of your choices. He swallowed hard. His mouth opened, closed. No words came. The audience erupted in applause, not for me, not yet, but for the weight of the truth sinking in. After the speech, I descended from the stage. My mother approached, gently taking my hand. I'm proud of you, she whispered. I smiled, squeezing her hand lightly. It's not about pride. It's about our respect. And it's about making sure lessons are learned the right way. My brother stood a few feet away, defeated but quiet. The whispers of the crowd surrounded him, carrying the weight of recognition for someone he had underestimated for years. For him, the lesson was devastating. For me, the lesson had been lived long before anyone knew. And as I walked out into the evening air, the city lights sparkling around me, I realized something profound. The world respects the quiet, the diligent, and the humble, not those who mock or belittle. My brother would remember this for the rest of his life, but more importantly, I had proven it to myself. The ceremony had ended, but the air still hummed with tension and realization. My mother approached me, tears in her eyes. I finally understand, she whispered. I judged you unfairly for so long. I shook my head gently. It's not about judgment. It's about understanding, and it's never too late to learn. My brother stood silently, the weight of his arrogance crushing him. His eyes met mine for the first time without mockery. They were heavy with respect and perhaps a hint of fear. You really were the one behind everything, he admitted quietly. His voice trembling. I never imagined. I smiled faintly. Exactly. And that's the point. Power isn't always loud. Success isn't always visible. Humility and patience create strength far greater than arrogance ever can. He nodded slowly. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. The dean walked over, a quiet pride in his eyes. Some lessons are learned with words. Others are learned with truth, he said softly. Today, all of you witness both. I glanced around the hall. Colleagues, students, and staff now looked at me differently. Not because I had revealed myself, but because I had earned respect through action, not applause. The city outside sparkled in the evening sun, golden and alive. My journey from a humble waitress to someone whose quiet diligence had moved mountains was finally complete. And as I walked away from the hall, I realized the most important truth. Respect cannot be demanded, it is earned. Humility is the ultimate strength. Arrogance blinds those who cannot see the real power that exists quietly among them. My brother had learned his lesson. My mother had seen the truth. And I had proven to myself that patience, intelligence, and integrity always prevail. Because in the end, power is not what people see. It's what they never see coming. And now, the world would never underestimate me again.